CrossFit is back and so am I. At least the Rogue Invitational is about to get underway, so we have another major CrossFit competition to turn our eyes to after the CrossFit Games, which we all know was a little bit different this year and sort of has an asterisk next to it for a lot of people. But Rogue should be the Rogue of past, at least in the way of it being a very serious and respected competition. So let's talk about it. The workouts have been announced and a lot of them look very good, very interesting to watch, very well programmed. I think it's something that a lot of us will enjoy seeing the athletes perform. And I think that's something that Rogue tries to do. They try to showcase the athletes. And I feel like these are good workouts to do that, at least the 7 of the 9 we know so far. And we have 9 events over 3 days. So this is a bigger competition than a semifinal. It's a pretty major competition. It's widely respected, like I mentioned earlier. So this is sort of, I don't know if you want to call it the end of the 2024 season, or I kind of look at it, at least this year especially, the beginning of the 2025 season. We're going to see a lot of athletes that we didn't really get to see during the CrossFit Games this year and get our first real look at them going into 2025 because they didn't compete or they pulled out in 2024. So let's talk about who I think is going to end up on the podium. And we will start with the women's field first. So honestly, I've heard some people pick Laura to win this again. She's won the last 2 years. She won in 2022 because Tia didn't compete. And then she won in 2023 beating Tia just barely, and Tia was, I believe, 5, maybe 6 months post-pregnancy, post-birth, and it came down to the last event. I definitely look at that win a tiny bit differently because I don't think Tia was back to full strength quite yet. It takes time to recover from a pregnancy. I've never been pregnant, but I've heard a lot of people say it's at least as much time as you were pregnant. And that was not how much time Tia had. So the fact that Tia could be 5 or 6 months post-birth and come in second and push Laura up until the last event, I think this is a lot about Tia. So I am going to put Tia on the top of my podium. I was going to have Gabby Magala in second. And I've changed that. Looking at the workouts, I do think they favor Laura more. Is that shocking? Not really. I mean, it is Rogue. It is a heavier competition, which would favor an athlete like Laura more than an athlete like Gabby. But I've been very impressed by Gabby recently. I was impressed with her at the CrossFit Games. If you watch Kill Taylor, she beat Taylor Self in one of the workouts recently. She's just looked really fit, really focused. I think that she's had a lot of changes in her life. It appears she doesn't talk a lot about this stuff, and she doesn't have to, but I'm not sure if she's still with Christoph Horvath, Laura Horvath's brother anymore. They were in a relationship for a long time. Not sure if that is happening after the CrossFit Games and them sort of being on different sides of whether or not to pull out. Christoph and Laura pulled out of the CrossFit Games. Gabby decided to stay and compete, ended up finishing on the podium in second place. And I think that sort of created a divide between those groups of people. And it'll be interesting just to see Laura and Gabby competing in the same competition. We really haven't seen them together since the CrossFit Games. But looking at the workouts, despite the fact that I think Gabby looks so strong and so good recently, I do have to give the edge to Laura for that second place position behind Tia. And then in third, that is where I will be putting Gabby Magala. She has just looked so good. I think she's really coming into her own. She's more active on social media, on her YouTube channel. She seems very focused. She seems very confident in herself. And I think a confident athlete, someone that's feeling good in their body, is a dangerous athlete. So I do think that we're going to see some big stuff from Gabby this 2025 season, and Rogue could be the start of that. But I just don't think that these workouts are perfect for Gabby to overtake Laura. So I'm going to have to give it to Laura. There is a handstand push-up event. We all know that's Laura's kryptonite. It's almost a little bit, it's almost sort of like we just like really focus on that flaw of Laura's. But it is a big flaw if these happen to be deficit. We don't know if they're deficit just yet. So that has yet to be seen. That could help Gabby possibly push for that second place position. But we're gonna have to wait. And also on the women's side, let me just point this out. I believe there have only been 2 winners of the Rogue Invitational ever. And that would be Tia-Clair Toomey and Laura Horvath. And I don't think Laura's ever beaten Tia at Tia's full strength. So I do think this is Tia's, but Laura and Tia are the 2 athletes you have to look at to win this. There's a couple other women athletes that I want to bring up that I think have top 10 potential and maybe even potential for that podium. So those would be Alex Kazan. She's improved so much over the last 2 years and is a very, very strong athlete. So I think in a competition like Rogue is one where she can really excel versus a competition like Wodapalooza, which tends to be a little less strength biased than Rogue. Ariel Lowen, she's just sort of an athlete that has continued to get better year after year after year. Last year, finishing in 3rd at the CrossFit Games. This year, she pulled out. You can never count her out, at least not anymore. She's proven herself quite a bit over the last couple of years. I keep my eyes on Ariel Lowen as well. I'd also keep my eye on Danielle Brandon. But I feel like that's more from the perspective of she's done really well at the games in the past. She has the capabilities to do really well. But I'm wondering what she looks like right now. I feel like I haven't seen enough from her to really know exactly how Danielle is going to perform here, but does have potential to be top 10 for sure. We're just going to have to see. Brooke Wells. Brooke Wells has come back from injuries. She's super strong. She always was one of the more power strong athletes. So competitions like Rogue might be better for her. She hasn't competed in Rogue a whole lot recently, so it'll be interesting to see her there. Her twin sister, Sydney Wells, is also going to be competing. I don't have her in the top 10, but they are genetically very similar. So I would say Sydney Wells is someone who could surprise, but I do expect Brooke to finish better than Sydney. And finally, Emma Toll. She's a powerful athlete, a European athlete competing closer to home in this sense than in Austin, Texas or Columbus, the 2 other areas that Rogue once was. So this could be a really good competition for her to do well. 2 other athletes I would also keep my eyes on, but I think this competition, I don't know, I just don't feel as strongly about them, but wouldn't be shocked if they were also in the top 10. One is Haley Adams. Haley Adams has never been the strongest athlete, but when she's competed in Rogue in the past, she's done fairly well. She's consistently done well at the CrossFit Games. She's coming back, and I think in a healthier place than ever before. So, like I said, with Gabby, a confident athlete is a dangerous athlete. I think that same element of confidence, of Haley focusing on strength at times, doing some bodybuilding, I think that could help her do well here. There's also that midline event. That's going to be great for Haley. There's the running event at the beginning of the competition with the sandbag. I think that'll be pretty good for Haley as well. So I do think there's some events Haley can do really well in, and there's probably some events Haley might take like close to last in. But they may offset each other, and I think she could possibly end up in the top 10. Another woman I would look at, Maddie Sturt. Had her best finish at the CrossFit Games now. She trains with Proven. She trains with Tia. that push obviously has worked for her. She's also in a relationship with Jake Crouch, who is another very good athlete. So I just think there are a lot of very good people that she's being pushed by now. And I think she has the potential to do well in most competitions that she enters. She is small, but surprisingly very strong, a very good squatter. So I think she has the potential to possibly make it into the top 10 as well. And then my dark horse for the top 10, but somebody that I think a lot of people will sleep on, is Taylor Williamson. Taylor was a team athlete for a long time with Mayhem. She was sort of Andrea Nisler's partner. They were always on teams together. And she's incredibly fit. I feel like these team athletes are oftentimes overlooked because we don't know their names as well as we know the individual athletes. But she works at it proven as well. I think that she has a lot of potential. She's very strong. This is that kind of event. I feel like she's sort of been working out with Sydney and doing competition qualifiers with Sydney to push her, and has done really well. And I think there's a lot of pressure off of Taylor Williamson because she doesn't really need to prove herself in any of these things. I think that could lead to her doing well in this competition as well. Let's go over to the men's side. So picking a male champion here is much more difficult for me than the female side, and I don't think that's surprising to anyone. But I did decide to make a pick as opposed to being like, here's a top 3 and I think one of these people will win. I'm gonna go with Justin Medeiros. Might feel like a weird choice, but he's done very well at the Rogue Invitational before. He looked very, very good at semifinals this past year. So I think he has it in him. I think he's hungry. I think he just has like a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. And I think that Rogue could be a good place for him to do that. So I'm going to put Medeiros as my top of the podium. Dallin Pepper is who I'm going to go with in second. Dallin had a fantastic CrossFit Games this past year, but he also had a very good one in 2023. So when people are like, maybe we have to throw out 2024, you could still look at 2023 and say, hey, Dallin was super fit then, and it's like kind of the future for American men in the sport. I think he could do well here. He's strong. I'm going to keep my eyes on Dallin Pepper for that podium. And then finally, I have Jeff Adler in third. Adler was a little bit of a difficult pick for me. Adler is super fit, but we didn't see him at the CrossFit Games. He pulled out after the first event. So I feel a little bit disconnected from where he is in his training. That being said, because he pulled out of the games, he may also have that chip on his shoulder and feel like he has something to prove. He did not defend his CrossFit Games title. Neither of the two champions, the male being Jeff Adler and the female being Laura Horvath, defended their championships last year, or this year in 2024. They didn't defend their 2023 championships. So I think Rogue, being one of the premier competitions, is an opportunity for these athletes to showcase what they could have done at the games after they decide to pull out. So I think that Jeff is going to be treating this more like his games. So definitely someone that, I mean, could push to the top of the podium, but I think is a very good chance of making it on the podium. Let's talk about the man just behind them. You know what? Let me say this first, actually. Brent Fikowski. There's this weird thing where I think there's a possibility of Brent Fikowski winning the Rogue Invitational. You wouldn't usually think it's a great competition for Brent, but he announced his retirement. That's big news. If you don't know that, Brent Fikowski announced his retirement. This is his last CrossFit competition. With that being said, he's the professor, right? He dials things in. Knowing this is his last hurrah, he might show out. He might be like, I gotta win this. Sell it all. There's nothing to save anything for. There's nothing to worry about overuse or injury for. There's nothing else to prepare for. Life, but like no other CrossFit competition to prepare for. He's not worried about like being ready for the Open. This is it. This is his swan song. So why not go out on top? He almost did that at the games. I kind of jinxed him in my video when I said I thought I was going to win for sure. He did not. He came in third. But this could be his opportunity to take the top of the podium. So although I don't have him on my podium because I just don't feel like he's the athlete that I would put to win Rogue, generally, I think under this once in a lifetime circumstance of it being his last competition ever, unless he changes his mind, that he might win it. You know, there's like different emotions there. Might be able to, you know, dig deep or something that like he usually can't harness and win it. I know it's a weird prediction for Rogue, but he's like my backup winner, sort of. Okay, on to the rest of the men that I think could be definitely top 10 potential, maybe end up on the podium. Vellner, how could you count out Patrick Vellner? He won the Rogue Invitational last year, and I almost had him on my podium. Almost. And I don't know exactly what makes me think that it's likely not going to be him to win the whole thing again. Maybe it's just his age. He's like an older athlete heading towards his twilight of his career. And there's all these younger men like Justin. Justin is still very young. He's won the CrossFit Games twice, but he did it super young. So he's still a baby. Justin Medeiros, a baby. He's like in his mid-20s. So still very young, getting better. Dallin Pepper, baby, early 20s and getting better. And they're just like strong guys. So I kind of had to put them ahead of Pat. But Pat is someone that if he ends up on the podium at the end of the weekend, I wouldn't be shocked and thinks he deserves it. Jason Hopper, another younger athlete, really strong, powerful athlete. I do think that this could be a good competition for him. He sort of changed his approach to training the last couple years. He's more relaxed. I think it's shown how it's helped him and improved him. So Jason Hopper, I would keep my eye on him as well. Ricky Garrard. Ricky Garrard twisted his ankle at the CrossFit Games. Might have been able to be a bit better if he didn't do that. Another reason why he may have a chip on his shoulder and have something to prove. Be like, I gotta win this. I gotta do this. So Ricky, this could be a big competition for him too. But I'm less confident in Ricky compared to the guys I just talked about prior to him. Chandler Smith, he's a strong athlete. This is a strong competition. I could see him doing well here as well. He's done well some years. He's done not so well some years. We'll see what this year brings. His CrossFit Games was a little bit of lackluster. I heard he didn't really want to compete, but his team did. So this is his opportunity to do it on his own and on his own terms. And finally, Guy Malheiros, super strong. He's got a couple of the events here that I think he could just knock out of the park. The one with the heavy snatches and the muscle ups. So I would look for Guy to get big points on some of these events and for that to propel him into the top 10, even if he has a couple not so great finishes. I did see that he's training for a marathon in a Mayhem video. So, I mean, maybe Guy has the potential to do a lot better than we think on some of the more endurance-y events. Surprising, but that training could do something and help him out. Finally, one other athlete I want to mention is Noah Olson. Yeah, I was surprised to see him competing as an individual again. And he did an Ironman this past weekend. And now he's going to Rogue. We'll see how that impacts this competition. Don't really know if I have him in my top 10, but just sort of something to think about, keep an eye on while you're watching the competition. So that's it for my Rogue Invitational preview. I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the athletes that I think you should watch. It is happening in Scotland, so the hours this competition is going to be going on is very early. I may hop on here for some lives after the competition is over for some of the days, one of the days, two of the days, and talk to all of you about what we saw go down and how it's going so far. I plan to have a wrap up of how the competition goes as well. I'm very excited to be back making videos. Took a little break after the games, just needed some downtime. This is just something I do for fun. So just took, a little pause, but back at it now that we've got some competition to talk about. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, give this video a like, and check out other older videos that I did from the CrossFit Games. I appreciate you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And so will Carson. Oh, Carson, say bye. Say bye. Bye.